Okay, everybody, welcome back to Sabado Sessions podcast. We are your hosts, and today we have none other than Coach Matt Gary, Game Day coaching extraordinaire. Happy to have you on, bro. First of all, how you been?
Out
Just
Life is good. I'm outstanding. I always tell people if I were any better, I'd be twins. So I just, man, it's an honor to be here. You know, your boy Jerns reached out to me in the DMs and was flattering me and was so overwhelmingly charming that he was just irresistible. So, but in all seriousness, man, I love what you guys do. This has been a bucket list podcast for me to come
oh,
on, and so I'm just thrilled to be here in your presence, man. This is gonna be a good conversation.
thank you, thank you. Oh man, yeah, well, honored to have you on as well. I know my coach has been like waiting for this one to happen. So, I mean, yeah.
Cool.
So first question, bro. You know what? Let's go straight into the meat of it. Durance, I hope you don't mind. Article 14.
Okay.
I mean, I've listened to what you had to post on your Instagrams and everything, but
Yeah.
man, like the for obviously for our listeners' sake as well, they may not know you. If you had to like give us like I don't know the cliff notes of it all,
Okay.
um, or
And yeah, you mean in terms of Article 14 and how it's affected me so far?
yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So we're assuming that your listeners understand what Article 14 is,
Hmm.
which basically states that once you're a member of an IPF affiliate or a member federation,
Yeah.
that the lifters, the coaches, the officials, and the volunteers can only stay basically within that organization. They cannot go outside and do a non-WADA tested event.
Hmm.
And so I think at a surface level, a lot of us can understand why that would be more digestible or more palatable if it applied only to the athletes, right? If it applied only to the lifters.
Of course, of course.
I think that makes sense. When you extend that rule to coaches, to officials, that's the judges, the referees, to people that are serving the federation and volunteering of their time, I
Hmm.
think that's where it becomes a significant issue that is not promoting the sport. In fact, I think it's tearing down the sport. It's
Would, would
hurting the
yeah?
sport.
Would you say that it's coming to a point where it feels as though it's monopolizing the sport?
Yeah, you could say that, right?
Hmm.
It's trying to pull all the people in one direction. And I don't know if this is, I don't want to sit here and say that this is entirely an anti-American rule. I'm not going to go that far, but it's affecting us the most because of
Hmm.
obviously the recent USAPL IPF divorce. The USAPL
Hmm.
was kicked out of the IPF. Now Powerlifting America, PA, has become the new affiliate. And so it's forcing lifters and coaches and officials and volunteers, like I said, to choose. And
Hmm.
so I've always said, I don't pledge allegiance to any one powerlifting federation. I pledge allegiance to two things: to my athletes
Hmm.
and to the sport of powerlifting. I'm pro powerlifting and I'm pro lifter. And so if I have a lifter who comes to me and says, "Yo, I want to compete at an international drug tested world championships," I'm like, well, if you live in America, you got to go through Powerlifting America to
Hmm.
get to the world championships. If I have somebody else who says, and when I say that, that doesn't mean that I'm anti USA powerlifting or that
Hmm.
I'm anti any of those federations. I'm just saying these are the hoops that you need to jump through to get to your end goal. On
Yeah.
the other hand, when I have a lifter who says, I want to lift at the Arnold, I want to lift at a mega nationals that has 5 platforms, that has all these big jumbotrons and all the glitz and glamour and, high level photography and videography production and so forth. I want to lift in a prime time session. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Then I'm like, then you need to go to USA Powerlifting. And when I say that, that doesn't mean that I'm anti PA or anti IPF.
IPF. Yeah.
It is the coach's job. If I could distill it down into one sentence, a coach's job is to put their athlete in the best position to succeed.
Hmm.
So right, that's the coach's job, regardless of whether they're a swimming coach, a powerlifting coach, ping pong or archery or what have you. It's their job to facilitate that. So that's what I try to do. So the way that Article 14 has affected me was on February 12th. This was about maybe 2 weeks prior to our Powerlifting America Nationals. It was a
Hmm.
Sunday. I received an email from a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, who said, "Yo, just want to give you a heads up. Well, the word on the street is you're on this ineligible list, in violation of Article 14." And I was
Hmm.
like, okay, let me go ahead and do some digging. And so, you can't find out everything on a Sunday afternoon. So the next morning, I started doing some digging, and I called Robert Keller, who's the president of Powerlifting America. And I've been involved in powerlifting for 28 years. I've known Rob for 27 years. I've known him since
Yes.
I've known Rob since 1996. Rob was also a national team coach within USA Powerlifting when I was the coaching chairman. So he technically served under me at different times. I've been an assistant coach on Robert's staffs. Robert has been an assistant coach on some of our staffs. So Robert and I have known each other for years. So I picked up the phone and I called him and I was like, hey man, what's the deal? I heard through the grapevine that I'm on this ineligible list. And he didn't even know of any list. He said, well, this is news to me. He said, let me make some calls and do some digging and so forth. So I think he reached out to the remainder of his executive committee with Powerlifting America. He called me back a couple hours later and said, yep, you are on this ineligible list. You are in violation of Article 14, because if we rewind the clock, I coached at Powerlifting America Nationals last year in 2022. I coached Chance Mitchell and I coached Enrique Lugo. I was obviously supposed to coach Ray Williams, but he got hurt the week before and had to drop out. So I didn't coach Ray, but I went down there. I coached Chance and I coached Enrique. So I had to purchase a Powerlifting America membership in 2022. Then when I went to USA Powerlifting, our big nationals, they called it mega nationals last year because they combined the raw and the equipped in June. That was in Las Vegas. I coached there. I had probably 20 lifters. I was therefore in violation of Article 14. So I never ran from that. I take responsibility for my actions. I make my bed. I got to sleep in it. I ran to that. And I said, yep, I was there. I did it, guilty as charged. And he said, okay, you're ineligible for a period of 12 months. So that means from the last day of Mega Nationals, which was June 12th of 2022 through June 12th of this year, 12-month ineligibility period for coaching at a non-WADA event. And so because of that, I was not able to coach at this year's Powerlifting America Nationals, right? I had Ray Williams. I was supposed to help Mike Tushir, Deuce Gruden. We had a guest lifter from Puerto Rico, Jonathan Rivera, and I had a 74 kilo as well. So five athletes that I was supposed, and Chance Mitchell, who didn't end up competing, of course, but I was supposed to coach him as well. So I had 5 or 6 lifters that I was supposed to coach at Powerlifting American Nationals that I was unable to coach because I found myself ineligible. So my wife, Susie, she coached all of those lifters.
Yeah.
I sat in the front row and offered my encouragement and my support. And come to find out, I'm also not allowed to coach at the Sheffield because originally I was going to coach Chance Mitchell, but now I'm not.
Yeah.
So that's where it stands as of today.
It's very sad for me to hear the entire story you just told there, right? Especially not even the fact that you are banned or the fact that the article exists, is the fact that you didn't know, you had to go your way to find out. To me, that's just unacceptable. So if they're banning a caliber of a coach like you, because let not be around the bushes, right? You are one of the best game day coach in the business, probably the best, right? So if you're banning a name like that as the IPF or PA or whatever it is, if you're banning a name like that, come on, give this person the benefit of doubt or even a respect to tell them. You know, that's to me is just like, it tells me straight. Would you say this rule is consistent?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. And here's why. Because I have no idea who else is on the list. And that's the truth. Like they didn't tell me who else was on the ineligible list. And I didn't ask because I believe in staying in my own lane and minding my own business. And I don't want to intentionally throw anybody else under the bus. Having said that, I think there's plenty of other coaches out there who have also been in violation. And to your point, Jurens, I 100% agree with you. It is the federation's responsibility to notify the athlete, the coach, the volunteer, the official, what have you, and say, hey, heads up, you're ineligible, and here's why. And this is the period of ineligibility, and these are the terms of your sentence, so to speak. But I received no notification. I was contacted, through a colleague of mine, and then I had to do the digging myself. So, but again, to answer your question, is it being applied fairly and consistently? I don't know. We'll see, maybe when we get to the Sheffield. And that's all I ever ask You know, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I'm not trying to hurt anybody else's coaching business. But if you're going to apply the rule to me, that's fine.
Yeah.
I take responsibility for my actions. I committed a violation, and I will serve the terms of my sentence.
Yeah.
But it needs to be enforced fairly and consistently.
I think my wildest take from what you just said there was the fact that Rob wasn't even aware of this ineligible list.
I know.
Because I reckon that should be, I don't know, something spoken about at the very least, as well as being notified. And then the fact that it will affect, since the divorce, like you said, of the USAPL from the IPF, there should have been, I don't know, like a bit more of an importance as to what's going to happen to, I don't know, old colleagues, ex-colleagues, people you respect within the community, right? Because it's just doing due diligence almost.
Sure.
So yeah.
I mean, for me, right, the other question I have for you, Matt, is it's just like, sorry, but I'm trying to get my head around it by the whole story that you told, because to me, I'm thinking the way they went on about it is wrong, right?
Mhm.
And already, I mean, I know we don't want to throw names here, we don't want to talk about people here, but if we look at the story across the board, there's no consistency, right?
Mhm.
So the first instance when you've been told that you were banned, did you feel like PA or the IPF wanted to make an example out of you?
I don't necessarily think they were trying to make an example out of me. What I do think is one of the greatest analogies that I can use of this whole situation is the USAPL and the IPF. It's almost like they were our parents. They got divorced, and now the kids are caught in the middle. And
Yeah.
the two, and it's not my fault that the two parents can't get along, but then the kids are being punished for the problems that the parents have.
Yeah.
And those aren't necessarily my problems. And again, all I want to do is facilitate for my athletes, for my lifters. I'm pro powerlifting. I want to pour back into the community. I want to lift up the community. I want to be able to take my knowledge, my expertise, my passion, my love for the people in the community and pour it back into every corner of the community that I walk through.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not coaching at untested meets. So it's not that I don't give a crap about the untested lifter. It's just that that's not my people. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So my people are the people in the IPF, you know, and the people in USA Powerlifting, obviously, because I'm an American and I live here. And of course, the people in Powerlifting America. And so I just want to help those communities. And it just really sucks because it feels like there's these rules and sanctions and handcuffs, if you will, that are being placed on people. Like, why am I in violation when drug tests, when officials and coaches when officials, volunteers, and coaches are not subject to the WADA code?
Yeah.
Then why am, you know, are those implications coming down on me? I'm not an athlete. I'm not lifting, you know?
I mean,
If I were
Is it something in America? Because this thing, again, as you mentioned there in the beginning, I'm sorry about this, Joey. As you mentioned in the beginning, seems to me this Article 14 is being enforced heavily in America, right?
Yeah.
And because we've seen it in America, that's where all these noises coming from. So I'm not saying in the UK it's not going to be enforced, but in the UK, I kid you not, tomorrow I can go to a non-WADA comp. No one will ban me here. Right? That's the reality of thing. That I'm not saying that we are lenient of the rules, but that's how I see it as. But you guys have been enforced over there. So as a group of coaches like yourself and the other people that probably might be affected, are you guys doing something about it, or are you just thinking, look, let me just ride along with it?
Well, you know, I think when we first look, I think initially when I'll be quite transparent and honest about the way that we've been operating, is that it seems like some of these rules and these articles are written in such a way that they're not crystal clear and they're a little bit vague, or they're just vague enough so that they can be open to a different interpretation at a different time. And so when the USA Powerlifting got divorced from the IPF, I said, look, I've got lifters that are going to go the IPF route and the PA route, and that's fine. And I've got lifters that are going to USAPL route. I'm going to continue to coach in this powerlifting community, in both communities, and I'm going to continue to help my athletes. And I believe it's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. So I'm going to keep rolling until I get slapped on the wrist. And of course, on February 12th, I got slapped on the wrist. And so here we are. So I'm going to ride out the suspension. I'm going to do what I can. I mean, of course, you have private conversations on the phone and group chats with different people and so on and so forth. And people, look, I haven't spoken to a single person in the community that believes that this is a good idea, that this is a good rule. Nobody thinks that this is pro sport. And so my only hope is that the IPF brass will get together at some point in time, have a serious conversation about the implications. You're forcing athletes to choose coaches that they don't necessarily, that wouldn't be their first choice. They're forcing them to work with other people. And how can you tell a volunteer, someone who is paying their own way to an event, to referee or to serve, how dare you tell them such arrogance? How dare you tell them where they can and can't give freely of their time, especially when we're not subject to drug testing. So that's the part that I don't get. So, Jerns, I guess to answer your question more pointedly, I don't know that there's a community of us that are, banding together to do anything significantly. I mean, I think there's been some discussions behind the scenes, what might happen if we got together and created some kind of petition, or if we did something like that, you know what I mean? I mean, I understand also that the General Assembly for the IPF, I know how it works because I've attended the General Assemblies and I've participated in them. Typically they happen at Open Worlds, which is equipped, and that's in November. And most of us now in this community are involved in the raw side of things for the most part. So it would mean that I would have to take, that somebody would have to take a trip to, I think, the General Assembly to get things proposed and then voted on, unless the IPF were to have some sort of meeting beforehand. And we can only hope that with this groundswell and this discussion, or I should say this groundswell of it affecting different people, that hopefully they would meet before then. And maybe consider amending the rule or something.
Talking about it, we had Gaston here, right? There's one thing Gaston said was, if we, as athletes, as coaches, as a member of IPF community and the powerlifting in general, if we feel there's something is burdening or something is burdening our heart or something is not being done right, he said is easily to be reachable. Have you guys thought probably let's reach out to the big man so we can get a bit more clarity on this?
The short answer to that is no. He came to our Powerlifting America Nationals in Texas, and he was there. He attended also Emmanuel Schreiber, and they were there. I did not have an opportunity, or I did not intentionally reach out to him at that time because it was so fresh, and I think there were some questions that had remained unanswered. And so I didn't take any steps. And quite frankly, I don't even think Gaston knew that I was ineligible at the time. He just saw me. He said hello to me. He shook it. And look, I take that man at his word. I do believe that Gaston would be willing to sit down with me or with anybody else. I think that he strikes me as the type of person who would be welcoming and open to those conversations. Would they go anywhere? I mean, I have no idea. Maybe if enough of us sat down with him and presented our case, then he could take that before the executive or something like that. There have been no arrangements that I'm aware of, to have any sort of those discussions, but certainly I would be willing to get into a private conversation or in a room with those guys and kind of present our case for sure, because I would be willing to go to bat for the other coaches and the other officials and volunteers who are affected.
Of course.
100%.
Man, Matt, I'm not gonna lie to you, there's a lot of questions that come to mind right now from what you just explained. I mean, first and foremost, that I want to ask is, what the time coming for the lifting of your suspension, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna get to a point, from how I see it right now, obviously up until the next General Assembly, where you're gonna have to make a choice to either avoid further suspension or just stick to one federation where, like it's basically, are you going to choose USAPL strictly or divorce yourself from that? I know we've been saying divorce a lot in this podcast already, but, or would you be like, all right, cool, I got X amount of lifters in Powerlifting America, would you? So what would your short answer be to that? Sorry.
Well, so I'll tell you, matter of factly, what we've done you know, SSPT is a team of two people. It's myself and my wife, Susie. And so when we came back from Powerlifting America, we had about 48 hours before heading out to the Arnold, right? My wife was registered to compete in the Masters Pro Finals at the Arnold. She had some of the best training of her life, you know, as a master. You know, she's not hitting all-time PRs, but as a master, her training had resurrected itself and we breathed new life into it. And she was excited about competing. We had to kind of do some soul searching. And in those last 48 hours, we decided that we would create a division of labor with SSPT where for this year, for 2023, I can't speak forward, but for this year, I would handle all the USA Powerlifting coaching chores, and Susie would handle all of the Powerlifting America and IPF chores. So she withdrew from the Arnold as a competitor, right? So she coached at Powerlifting America Nationals, and I sat in the audience. When we got to the Arnold, we flipped roles. I coached at the Arnold, and again, I'm not going to run from that. If the IPF wants to tack on another 12 months, then so be it. That's what they're going to do. But I'm not going to penalize my athletes because of some rule that I think is absurd. There's no other way around it. You know, I'm not going to punish them. So I went to the Arnold and coached. So to answer your question, for this year, I'm doing the USAPL stuff. She's doing the PA stuff until further notice because Susie is eligible. And I don't know a lot of coaches. I'll be honest with you. I mean, a lot of, you know, I give my wife a lot of respect for her doing that because I don't know a lot of people.
That's a huge sacrifice, man.
Who would sacrifice their own athletic ambition, their own agenda, their own goals to help and to pour back into the community in that way. So, you know, if Gaston could see that, or the IPF brass could see that you're essentially, you know, look, we all have choice and the choices are difficult sometimes, but you're basically forcing this decision, which is not an easy one. And she took one for the team and she said, you know what, I'm going to withdraw because she plans on going to our Powerlifting America Masters and Junior Nationals in June and coaching there. We have a bunch of masters and juniors and subs that will need that want our services. And so she's going to go there. And the thing is now, imagine if my wife wanted to compete at Powerlifting America Masters to go to the Masters World Championships. I can't even go there and coach her. So bro, so it's like,
insane,
do you see what I'm saying now? So it's like, so then I would have to find her another coach. Not that she's not capable of coaching herself. She certainly could, but you don't want to put an athlete in that position. So
of course,
these are the decisions, you know, and look, at the end, yeah. So anyway, so these are kind of the decisions that we've had to make. And for the calendar year, that's what we're doing. And other coaching outfits like Reactive Training Systems, like TSG, like TSA, they have enough staff. They have enough people where they can create their own division of labor when they say, okay, you 5 or 6 coaches are going to do the IPF stuff and the rest of you are going to do the USA powerlifting stuff. And that's understandable. When it's me and my wife, there's just 2 of us, right? So that's the decision we've made.
This is actually affecting people's life. This is where it's getting to, because I know we all do powerlifting for our own reasons. Well, we got different reasons we do this sport, right? Some people define it as a place where they can relax. Some people define a place where they can defeat the demons and all of that stuff. So for someone to have a prep like what your wife did to come to a championship and drop out because of some rules, to me personally, I think is wrong. It's something, I mean, again, I don't have the power to do something, but something have to be done, right? Something have to be done. And talking about it, literally, I'm gonna write Gaston a long ass email myself after this podcast. So yeah, if he had to come here and explain himself again, more than happy. But yeah, something have to be done.
But you know what, Matt, if you don't mind, I know I said I had a bunch of questions, and one of the biggest takes that what you tried to explain earlier was that it definitely shows it now that you yourself and your wife, the coaching team of 2, are more than happy to give back to the community. And I know you wrote a book. I know you've hopped on a few podcasts now talking about it. But my first question about the book and everything was, what was the inspiration behind it? I know it's going to be, if I had to hazard a guess, like you just want to give back to the community, but there must have been like that specific moment, right, where you're like, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And I want to know what was it all like behind it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I've known that I've wanted to write this book for a really long time. I think that one of the things that I've been blessed with is, when a lot of us get into this sport as lifters, I think it's a common theme that you obviously want to maximize your talents, right? All of us want to be the best version of that we can be. And so as a kid or as a young person, as a junior lifter, when you get into this sport, it's like you have these aspirations of becoming an all-time great. And when you realize, hey man, that's just not in the cards for you for whatever reason, be it a lack of genetics or a lack of opportunities. And I'm not singing a negative song and strumming my violin here or anything like that. I'm just saying that for me, that really wasn't in the cards. I knew that I could be a good lifter, that I could maximize my talents, but I knew that I would never, probably become a world champion. And that's not me being pessimistic. It's just a reality. My wife at under 5 feet is never going to dunk a basketball. And so that doesn't mean that she's a quitter. It doesn't mean that she's got a negative mindset. It's just sometimes we have these, for lack of a better word, these constraints within our lives that can preclude us from achieving certain things. So I knew that in order for me to achieve the best version of myself, one of the gifts that I feel I've been given is the ability to coach, which I believe is teaching. Coaching is teaching. And so when I was involved with USA Powerlifting as the coaching chairman and as the coaching certification director, I took over that position in 2012 and had to revise the curriculum for USA Powerlifting and for the coaching certification. I knew in the back of my mind, I was like, there's so much stuff out here on programming, on nutritional sciences, on biomechanics, on all these different aspects of powerlifting. You need not look very far. They come in written form, and certainly they're on the internet, but there's never been anything that's been a tangible text or how-to manual specifically on game day coaching. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Avi Silverberg, who was the Canadian national team head coach, who I'm good friends with, he created this online course through his website called, I think it's powerliftingtechnique.com. And we did an online seminar essentially on game day coaching, but there's never been a physical, tangible text that you could refer back to. Yeah. And so that was kind of the impetus. And so, powerlifting has just done so much for me in terms of helping to give me life purpose. And I've cultivated this passion of mine. And most of all, the greatest gift that powerlifting has given to me is the people and the community and those relationships. And so I wanted to give this back to the powerlifting community to raise the level, to raise the, high tide raises all boats. I wanted to help share my knowledge with other people because I believe that I have that gift. And in writing something, it's expressed in a medium where I can pour out all of my thoughts or most of my thoughts, and then people can refer back to it. The other thing is, as I said, there was scarcity in the marketplace. There was nothing in the community. So I knew that I would essentially be the first, and that, and then lastly, just doing this, I really wanted it to leave behind something in terms of my legacy. Powerlifting coaches nowadays wear a lot of different hats. They obviously, the biggest one probably is programming, and that's what people seek, out in powerlifting coaches is a programming coach, but some people like Eric Helms might also do nutritional consultation. And then you got people who specialize in biomechanics and so forth, people who are motivators and attack it from more of a psychological perspective. And all of that stuff is cool, but you can have 5 lifters, right? In Jern's weight class, we use Jern's as an example. You go to the world championships in the 83 kilos, and all 5 of these guys, their journeys looked very, very different to get there. Somebody uses RPE, somebody uses percentages, somebody uses, conjugate, whatever. They all get there very differently. But what matters the most is the game day product. It's what you put on the platform at that time. It's the lifts that you make. Those are the PBs that matter. Those are the only ones that people care about. It doesn't matter what you did in training. It's what you are capable of doing on that day. And so for those reasons, that is the coaching aspect that I love the most. That's what gets my fire burning and my motor running. And it's all I've ever wanted to be known for, is I wanted to be the best that I could be at one thing. That's it. I want to be a specialist. I don't want to be average at a bunch of stuff. I want to be the best I can be at one thing. And so for all those reasons that I just mentioned, that is why I wanted to put this into the community and share my knowledge with others.
Matt, okay.
I've got so many questions. Jesus
Wait,
Christ,
let me go first. Let me go first. Let me go first. So, okay. So the book itself, Matt, right? The
Yep.
book itself. You said you wanted to, share the knowledge that you have and what you're
Yep.
most passionate about within the sport, and that's what pretty much inspired you to write the book. But in the book, obviously, I'll admit I haven't read it myself. I'm fucking excited to now, though. I've only gone through whatever you've posted, like what it will
Yep.
include. But one question came to mind was when I was like going through, I guess, the contents list, right? Was
Yep.
that who would you say is the demographic you want to hit the most with your book? Would it be the lifters themselves or the coaches? Because the parts of the contents, right, first felt as though you want to be like the coach's coach. It's like because
Mhm.
like for example, like the philosophy, the knowing, like if the coach knows the rules, then they know how to like sort of get the most out of you, out of the day, out of game day, pretty much. Or would you say like maybe it's more so the athletes that you want to sort of hit, have a bigger impact on, sorry, with your book? Because there was a lot of it, man. Because like if a lifter can, can excel well with the coach and the vibe, not, I'm paraphrasing it, but the vibe that they have and how they correlate, not just like within training, but like the mindset, just like you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
So yeah, so my question is, would you say it's more in tune towards the coaches or the athletes?
Both, to be honest with you.
There's
Yeah,
no
both.
there's no more of
So,
the other.
no, I mean, so the reason that here's the thing, I intentionally started the book with, I mean, I think there are other people who can write this book, and I don't know that they have. And I'm not saying this to thump my chest or pat myself on the back.
No, do it, bro.
No,
Just
no, but I've got a lot of experience doing this at the international level. I've been in the sport for 28 years, and I've been to over 25 world championships, and 16 of them have been overseas. I think it was, I mentioned in the book. So I have a significant amount of experience, and so and I lost my train of thought for a second, but I want to help both the coaches and the lifters equally, because I think, and I intentionally put philosophy. That's what I want to get back to. I intentionally put philosophy and psychology at the beginning of the book, because that your coaching philosophy should be probably inextricably linked to your life philosophy, to your values, to who you are as a person. And that is vitally important, and I believe should be the bedrock of your foundation from which you make coaching decisions. You're dealing with people, you're not dealing with robots. And so therefore, built on top of your philosophy, I believe it's important that you understand coaching psychology and how to interact with and how to deal with different people who come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different genders, different set of circumstances, different aspirations, objectives, different talent levels, all of these things, right? And that you know how to interact with them. Because if you don't have a coaching philosophy, right? And I'm not talking about your preference for RPE over percentages. That's not what I'm talking about. Those are tools that a coach uses, right? That a coach can use both of those tools at the same time.
Yeah.
Those are coaching tools. I'm talking about your values, your principles, your moral code, the way that you operate, what makes you you. If you can't clearly define those things, then your foundation is built on sand. And therefore, if you don't understand psychology, then you can't interact with lifters. So I know this is a long way of saying I really want to cater to the coaches in that way, because I believe they need to establish their philosophy, understanding coaching psychology, but also to help the lifters, some of which coach themselves, on, hey, here's a systematic approach. This is the approach that we use to warming up, to calling attempts. I've studied the data. These are the reasons why we do the things that we do. And I'm not trying to proselytize anybody. I'm not trying to make people little SSPT clones. I'm not trying to develop a cult. Not that at all. Take pieces of our recipe, take the good parts that you like, throw out the bad stuff that you don't agree with, and then craft your own. And so for all those reasons, I believe it's for both coach and lifter. And look, a lot of coaches are also lifters, right? Mike T, Bryce Lewis, all those guys, Sam Calhoun, they're all coaches and they compete as well.
Yeah.
And so they can employ both of these methods. And I think our method is teachable and reproducible. And as I said, you can take the bits that you like and throw out the stuff you don't.
You see, that's really important what you just said. For anyone who's listening, it's so hard in these days, especially nowadays, for someone to write a book, of someone to make a movie, of someone to do anything, to say, this is what I've done. Take the bits that it would be interesting, it'll work for you, the rest for. It's so hard for someone to say that sentence, because one of the things happening nowadays, especially in this digital environment, people just want to make themselves elite, thinking everything I do is gold. Everything I touch works. Everything I say is the right thing to say. Do you know what I mean? That is gold right there. This is where the difference is. That's always telling you on the DMs. People like you, I'm not just saying the fact that because I'm a fan. People like you are rare.
Yeah.
They don't
It takes a lot
always
of
just come,
humility to say
you
that.
know,
If I
to
had
say
to
that.
sum it to words, yeah.
Well,
So
I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, that's why, like, for instance, one of the chapters in the book is on making weight, right? I think it's important that a game day coach be equipped with these tools and an understanding of how elite level lifters are going to use these tools and these strategies to make weight. I am not even remotely expert in those areas. And so I reached out to someone that I believe is expert, and I invited Kedrick Kwan to be part of the project. He's getting his PhD in this stuff. He has been mentored and been under the tutelage of Eric Helms. So who better at this point in time? He's worked with Taylor Atwood, Leah Bavois, Emil Krastev, Heather Kahn. I mean, you name, the list goes on, and use these strategies at such a high level. And so I collaborated with Kedrick to write that part of the chapter, because that's not my expertise. But I wanted to have a growth mindset and learn from him, and then take that knowledge, give him credit for essentially writing the chapter, more or less, you know, saying, look, I called in these other experts in these other areas to put forth this information. So yeah, look, nobody out there knows it all. And if they say that they know it all, they're lying to you.
Yeah. You know, I'm so happy you mentioned collaboration, because like, every coach should know the extent of his knowledge, right? If they feel as though they know, or like you said, they're definitely lying to you. It's funny you mentioned, you know, Kendrick Kwan. He's working with all these great athletes. He's actually working with Durance also.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I've always, I mean, for a good while, Durance and I have always spoken about, like, one of his biggest downfalls before was the nutrition aspect. You know, I could only go so far from my knowledge, and it's not extensive, to, you know, admittedly. So for him, for nice, when we started collaborating with Kedrick, man, like, the results are speaking for itself. I'm pretty sure you're aware of that. So I mean, like, yeah, I guess my question from that is, when it comes to coaches, right? Like, not only is it, you know, again, it's showing humility to say, like, you know, this is where my expertise is limited. Would you say there's also a point where a coach should be honest with themselves, where they feel as though they won't be able to offer, per se, what the I don't know, the potential lifter is looking for when approaching them? Because I mean, you know, like, I don't know if you're aware, but I coach Durance, and there are times when I felt as though, all right, cool, this is working. This is working because, you know, in terms of, like, not just like within the training itself, but outside of the training, the mindsets gel well, right? And, you know, I've taken in and obviously lost, and I've come to, like, the realization that, you know, maybe I don't get along in the same sort of wavelength as I do with Durance, as in comparison to other lifters. And then there are those that I do still, right? And then I see the common traits with Durance and others that I still do coach to this very day. Is there a time when you sort of can suss out from early on, like, man, this lifter is approaching me and they're talking to me, but I have to be honest with them and be like, I don't think I'm your guy?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, first of all, yes, I've had people that have come to me for coaching in the past, and I've kind of vetted them, right? I think there's this interview process that needs to happen. I mean, it's like going on a date. It's like going on a date with somebody. No, for real, right? It's like, no,
I
seriously,
mean,
right? Like, no, for real. Like, let's keep it real. Let's keep it 100, right? If you're meeting somebody that you're considering having some kind of romantic relationship, isn't that what dating is? Part of it is it's an interview. You're interviewing that person, trying to find out, am I compatible with this person? You know, do our values align? Do our similarities, are they close enough? Or are our differences not so sharp that it's going to become a boiling point situation where you know, we're going to part ways? And so anyway, so yes, the same thing with coaching or going out to buy a house or a car. You go through this list of needs, these needs of these things that you specifically look for. And then, hey, maybe you find that, wow, this is a bonus. This is an add-on. I didn't even know that I was looking for this. Like Joey brings this to the table, and I hadn't even considered that he brings this to the table. But I think it's important, to your point, that coaches are real, that they're authentic, and that they remain humble enough to know that they're, you know, I'm not for everyone. My personality and my skill set is not congruent with every single lifter out there. And so one of the things that I have, like when someone asks us for game day coaching, I have a questionnaire that I send to them. One of the first things that I do when someone reaches out to me, and I believe in treating them with gratitude and treating with them with respect. And I think that that's a lost, unfortunately, a lost art form. When I get a request or an inquiry, whether it's a DM, whether it's an email, whatever it may be, like the very first thing I do is I express gratitude to them. I'm like, man, thank you. Like, thanks for reaching out to me. Like you obviously found me and you're trying to inquire about my services and my expertise. So first of all, thank you. And I say, here's what I believe that I can offer. And this is kind of how we go about things. But also I'd like you to take the time, if you don't mind, to fill out this questionnaire. And the questionnaire that I'll have the game day coaching athletes fill out is obviously things like their name, their weight class, their PBs, obviously, yada, 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 contextual information in terms of training. But I also want to know stuff about their personality. Like, why are they reaching out to me? Do you have a programming coach that you are already working with so I can invite that coach into the conversation so that they don't feel like they're being pushed out? What are there specific cues that you need to hear before your lifts? How do you characterize your personality on, you know, in terms of introversion, extroversion on game day? Are you more conservative? Are you more aggressive? These sorts of things, you know, what I also tell my lifters or prospective clients or lifters who find us, if you were to literally just close your eyes and imagine the perfect 9 for 9 day where you hit 4 PBs, squat, bench, dead, total, you knock it out of the park. It's your signature performance. What would you need from me to make that happen? And if you, and that's one way that I can find out if I can fill that void for you. If I possess the qualities and the characteristics to help possibly bring that to fruition. And if the answer that I believe is no, or if they tell me straight up, like, look, man, I really don't want you to play a role in the attempts. I really just want you to kind of load weights and be a timekeeper. Then I'm like, nah, thanks for the inquiry, but I'm not your guy. And that's not, look, and I'm also saying that with the understanding that I'm not a dictator, right? If Jurens came to me and said, you know, I want coaching at this competition, this is not me dropping the hammer and say, no, Jurens, you're taking this attempt. That's not what it is. This is a collaboration. You know, I need to do the things to facilitate Jurens' best performance. By the same token, I need to be objective. I need to be rational. I need to be unemotional and not attached to any specific number. I need to give him objective feedback. So if he's not willing to allow me or doesn't want to use me to maximize my talents, my expertise in this one particular field, then I'm probably not for him. And that's okay. Like, I don't bruise easily. I don't get my toes stepped on. Like, if we're not a good match, cool. It's all good. Let me potentially offer some referrals or point you in another direction where you're going to be happy. So the same thing is true with other aspects of coaching. Like you said yourself, Joey, you reached out because you knew that you were deficient in the area of nutrition and that sort of thing. And you joined forces with Kedrick. And now look at you. You know, Jurens is lifting better. You know, he's probably recovering better. His workouts are more productive, all of these things. So it's, yeah, people need to be humble enough to admit that you don't know what you don't know. And if you can't figure that out, then you damn well better find somebody who can, or else
Sure.
you're doing your lifter a disservice.
Now, one thing you mentioned there, right? Every time, like, you're like, well, you're like an encyclopedia. Every time you open your mouth, I got so many questions, literally, like, I'm forgetting some of them, literally. So, you mentioned about that collaboration in terms of, like, especially on the game day, so you don't want the lifter you are handling to ignore the programming coach or the day-to-day coach. Like, for instance, like, I mean, just like full transparency, I've been with Joey for 6 years since I started powerlifting. Right, I've never had any other coach into my life. So if I get someone like yourself, like an example you give there, you probably have to get Joey involved into that conversation, into the process, which is fine by me. So how do you deal with things where you handle someone a world or a big event, they win, and people go like, "Oh yeah, Matt Gary just turned up to make that person win." To be a reality, the reality is that was not his job. He's just gonna get it. He's just gonna ride the success with the lifter. How do you deal with things like that? Because I'm sure on all the 20 odd years you've been coaching, you've had people like that have come to you saying, "Yeah, but he won, but it's not because of you, because of the coach or something." How do you deal with things like that?
Well, let's keep it real, right? There are people who possess prodigious talent, and they are talented despite the efforts of their coach. So they might come into that coaching relationship and they already have the talents, they already have the ability to excel. But then when they join forces with the coaches help to maximize that talent and allow that crop to grow. You know what I mean? They water that seed, and then that seed flourishes and it blossoms and it blooms. So look, I'm the first one to say, when I jump to the front of the line, I'm the first one to admit, I don't take credit for the lifters' accomplishments. They're the ones walking out on the platform, stepping into the arena and making the lifts. Lifters make lifts just like players make plays. They have to execute. It's my job to put them in the best situation to succeed. So I will never take credit for their accomplishments or try to overshadow what they've done. Did I throw my hand in the pile? Was I instrumental in pointing them in the right direction? Yeah, probably was. You know what I mean? I believe that I've helped a lot of lifters maximize their talents and so forth, or help them become the best version of themselves. I'll give you a perfect example. Let's talk about Ray Williams, because that's my lifter, right? Because I'm Ray Williams's coach. Can I tell you a story? Is that okay?
Of course,
of course,
of course.
Yeah.
By the way, Matt, this is a safe environment. Don't worry, it's not going anywhere.
Joey and I talked about this off air.
We did, bro.
I said, yo, Jerns is going to say, it's okay, Matt, this is safe. And you know what, Jerns, I feel safe in your arms, brother. But let me tell you something. When this podcast hits the airwaves, that's when it's unsafe.
Yeah.
Right. So we're gonna keep it real. Here's the reality. So I met Ray Williams. The first time I ever laid eyes on Ray was 2013 in Orlando, Florida, at our nationals. Okay. And Ray was competing, and he made the national team, and to go to the World Championships in South Africa. And so for those who know your history, you had the Raw World Cup in 2012 in Stockholm, Sweden. I was there. That was the first World Championships without it being named the World Championships. Everybody who was there knew that this was a Raw Worlds. They just named it the Raw World Cup because they were test driving the idea of a Raw Worlds. In 2013 in Russia, it officially became the Raw World Championships. But let's just call it what it is. It was the World Championships. So 2012 through 2015 in America, we had the same national team head coach for our Raw national team. And her name was Angela Simons. And so when we went to the Raw World Cup, it was just open lifters. There were no juniors, there were no subs, there were no masters. And then in 13 and 14, our team exploded because they decided to include all of the masters and the juniors and the sub juniors. So I was an assistant coach on the team in South Africa in 2004. I was an assistant coach on all of these teams. But in 2014 in South Africa, I was an assistant coach for Angela. And when she got to the end of the week for the session with the super heavyweights, she was literally, she was like sleepwalking. Okay. She was riding on fumes because she had been involved in every single session, coaching lifter after lifter. And she literally like couldn't even see straight. I mean, it was bad. She was physically like not well. So she asked me, she's like, can you take care of Ray? I was like, of course, I'd be happy to. I already had a super heavyweight lifter, somebody that I wrote training for and programming for, who was competing. His name was Matt Bauer, and he was more of a bench press specialist. So he wasn't a threat to Ray. I just wanted him to lift well, hit some PBs, and get the bench press world record, which we did. But so I met Ray in the warm-up room. This is the truth. This was our very first interaction, 2014 South Africa. I met him in the warm-up room, and I had about 30 minutes prior to us warming up to basically introduce myself and say, hey man, look, you're at a world championships and this is kind of how it's going to go. I've got experience being at these, and I know that you're this incredible talent, and I want to maximize your talent. But I think, this might be the best way to get there. And so Ray, being a football coach as well, he's an American football coach, or at least he was, is a very coachable person because he's also a coach. So Ray so I asked Ray, I said, Ray, what were your plans for today in terms of attempts? Where, how did your training go? How did, so on and so forth. And I kind of knew a little bit about how his training went because we'd found out prior to that. But I said, how did your training go? What are your goals? And he told me, and I said, well, what kind of attempts do you think you were, planning on taking? And he told me, and I said to him respectfully, I said, Ray, you're not in Mississippi anymore. You're now in Potchefstroom, South Africa. You've traveled a long way, and the impacts of that on the body, and particularly a man of your size, are much greater. I said, what do you think about, I can get you to these endpoints. I believe that you can hit these lifts that you would like to hit, and your training evidence that you've shown me and told me speaks to that. But how do you think about taking a slightly different path to get there? And he looked at me and he kind of paused and he said, let's do it. And I said, okay. I said, I'm going to get you every single lift that you asked for, but we're going to take a slightly different approach. I'm not going to run you through the whole meet. He becomes a world champion. He sets a squat world record. He sets a total world record. The only lift that he missed was his opening deadlift because he put his hands out of place. So he retook the opening deadlift. So I believe he went 8 for 9. We are walking down to doping control. And here's the punchline for this whole story. We're walking down to doping control. And he says to me, he's kind of chuckles. He says, man, those were the easiest 9 attempts I've ever taken. And I said, and I started laughing. And I said, you know why? I said, because we took appropriate jumps for your strength level. So if you go into open powerlifting, and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, I'm just keeping it real, and it's pouring into Jurgens' answer. If you pull up Ray Williams on open powerlifting, and he's going to do it now. If you look at his meet history prior to 2014 Worlds, there's probably about 5 meets listed. And you have a man that's capable of squatting at the time 400 plus kilos, 900 some pounds. He's only taking like 10 kilo jumps. And I said, Ray, you were starting out too heavy. You're taking jumps that maybe a 63 kilo lifter would take. You know what I mean? Your strength is much greater than that. And so you were starting out too heavy, and you were revving your engine too hot, too early. And that's why your attempts took too much out of you. Yeah. I said, all I did was have you start a little bit lighter and take more pragmatic attempts. So here's the whole punchline and all that to answer what Jurgens said. I didn't make Ray Williams, right? Ray Williams was him before I ever came into the equation. What I did was help to steer him down a different path and help to make better decisions to help to maximize his talents. So look, have I been instrumental in engineering some world championship performances and making some attempt calls? Sure. But I don't, it's the lifter that deserves the credit because they're the ones walking onto the platform and executing at the highest level. So they make me look good. They reinforce, you know what I'm saying? They reinforce the call that I made. And sometimes you get it wrong. I've made bad attempt calls. You're going to make mistakes. I'm fallible. Nobody's perfect.
Yeah. Wow, man.
I mean, that, by the way, I just checked. You're right about what you said about Ray Williams' attempt before, prior to that. It was literally like 10, 15, 5.
Yeah.
So you love it.
Small small progressions for such a big, strong man. And I was like, look, you're not taking the same kind of attempts that my wife is taking, man. Like, no. You're 3 times as strong as these people. You need to take more pragmatic attempts. And so ever since then, it's like we've taken more pragmatic attempts and the rest is history. And that's and so sometimes that's how it is with other lifters. In a national team situation, Jurgens, and I have a chapter in my book about national teams. The head coach oftentimes is commissioned. They are paid by the federation. They are a paid employee, whether it be a stipend, whether it be a commission, whether it be whatever. They are there serving in that role, representing their nation, representing their federation, and also representing themselves. And so ultimately, it's their ass that's on the line. So I respect the coaches who do the programming. And I invite them into the conversation, and they should be a part of that conversation with the understanding that the national team head coach is the buck stops with them. Ultimately they're going to be the ones that have to make the call. Does that mean that if I was coaching Jurgens at a world championships for GB, that I would take Joey and strong arm him and push it? No, of course not. I would invite you into that conversation. I would have invited you into that conversation right from Jump Street, right from the beginning. We would have been talking and collaborating so that we were all on the same page and have this cohesive understanding and arrangement. And look, if it ultimately, we'd probably be on the same page anyway. I mean, obviously there's, so anyway, that's kind of how it goes. But no, Matt Gary doesn't make lifters. The lifters make themselves, and they execute at a high level, which makes the decisions that I make, look good.
Man,
so that led me to one question, right? I know you said Roy Williams coachable because he's your athlete, and again, the history and the numbers can tell the story. We don't need to go about talking about Roy Williams accolade. So all the history you guys made together. So my question to you is not about the name of the lifter. So which of the major championships you've coached in your career is the most difficult one? The ones that you go in, the athlete you're coaching, they are loose cannon, the atmosphere is shit, and then you don't like everything else. Which one is it? Which one? If you don't want to talk about a specific, give at least a year and the month.
Yeah, hell yeah. No, I'm going to be totally transparent. So let me kind of set this up for you. I've been fortunate to be the head coach of 5 national teams. The head coach. In 2008, that was an NAPF team. In 2009, that was the men's team at the World Games. And then from 2010 through 2012, I was in charge of the women's equipped teams. All of the other coaching appointments that I've had, I've been either a personal game day coach on a team, or I've been an official assistant. And I've done that more than 25 times on international teams. So without question, that's an easy question to answer, Jurgens. The 2 most difficult teams was my wife, Susie, was the head coach of the U.S. Raw national team from 2016 to 2018. And so the teams on 16 and 17, but mainly 16, were the most difficult to deal with. I would say by and large, the lifters on that team were wonderful. Okay. We had Taylor Atwood. We had Jen Milliken. My wife, Susie, lifted. We had Deuce, or not Deuce Gruden. I'm sorry. We had Dennis Cornelius. We had Bryce Lewis. We had Garrett Blevins on those teams. We had, I said, Jen Milliken. We had Heather Connor. We had Marisa Inda. We had all those people.
This is in Killeen, right?
Yeah. So in Killeen and then in Belarus. But we had about 3, maybe 4 people who were divas, absolute divas. They were objectionable at every fork in the road, right? They were uncommunicative. They were abrasive. We got blocked on social media by somebody who refused to let us see their training because they thought that we were going to send their game plan to another lifter from another country. First of all, you really think that I'm going to send your game plan to somebody else from another country, your chief rival. I don't roll like that. I've never rolled like that, and I would never do that. I believe that I'm a man of integrity. I believe in playing by the rules. I mean, hell, upholding the standard is our mantra for SSPT, and that speaks into every aspect of your life. I would never, under any circumstances, do anything like that. So we got blocked on social media. I couldn't see, and those types of people, right? And they're few. They're few. They are the exception. Let's make that clear. Most of the people we work with are wonderful, but there are a few who they don't want to be coached. They feel like I've gotten to this level and I've done these things and I don't want your feedback. And I don't want to hear anything that could potentially improve my performance because I've already done X, Y, and Z. And so really, they didn't even want to be part of the team. We had a couple lifters who warmed up on their own. They went to a different rack in the warm-up room and didn't want to warm up with the rest of Team USA. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? That's fine. You do you. And at that point, because I mean, I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to be a gentleman. I'm here to serve this country. I'm here to serve this federation. And, and we're not going to make ass out of ourselves. And, my wife, let's make it clear, Susie was the head coach and I was her primary assistant. And so we just wanted to continue to operate with class and integrity and humility and just do the very best we can. So when you have people like that, who again are the exceptions to the rule, then you just have to take a deep breath and you just have to, do the best you can in dealing with those people. And it can be difficult, but it was very challenging. So 2016 in Killeen and then 2017 again in Belarus, we had a couple. So there was about 3, maybe 4, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's nothing more contagious. The only thing more contagious than a good attitude is a bad one. And so that bad attitude can begin to permeate into the rest of the crew. And so you at that point, you kind of want to put it into its own little box. So it's like, you want to warm up on your own? Fine. Go ahead and warm up on your own. That'll work because you're not gonna contaminate the attitudes of the rest of the teammates who want to be here, who have USA written across their chest, who aren't as concerned with the name on the back of the jersey. They're concerned with what's right here.
Yeah.
Because see, again, what you just said, right? This is the misconception that people outside the American, like people like us, actually make up of Americans. What you just said, because again, I'm just be full transparent here. Outside America, everyone thinks Americans are arrogant, right? This is the culture. I mean, I think me and you were having this conversation with the DMs. The way your culture is, the way people are in America, you guys are heavily competitive, which is good, which is fine. Life, you have to be like that. You want to go somewhere, you need to fight for it and get it. That's life. And what you guys always call a dogfight. Go for it. That's fine. But outside your country, people are in this side of the river, they will think we always think you guys are American. If you want to talk about, in my family, if I say to my dad, I'm married an American, my dad will be like, are you fucking kidding? Do you know what I mean? So it's a reality. So the example you gave there, where you go to a world championship, lifter separate himself from the teams, everyone else are looking, thinking, oh, that's the American thing. You can only be an American to do that. Now you say this, it leads me to say, after this podcast is finished, I'm going to have to go to the 2016 and 2017 team and do a Q&A on my podcast, see who is the diva in America, and I'll put a name of all the athletes.
But I was gonna ask on the flip side though, Matt. You had the situation like the Ray Williams where that was your first time meeting him. You just spoke to him. You said because he, being a coach himself, was very coachable. I think of it as kind of like the cup analogy where if someone's cup is full, you can't pour anything else into that. Whereas for those that like Ray Williams, he's like he emptied his cup, spoke to you, and then was just open to the idea that you had in mind. Would you say there were other examples similar to how Ray was in the national teams that you've gone to international with?
Yeah, I mean, so Ray was a unique example in terms of, because let me back up for a second, if you will. Whenever I've been the head coach of a team, or my wife Susie has been the head coach of a national team. We believe, I mean, right from the beginning, open the lines of communication, be invitational in getting the programming coach, if there is one, into the conversation, and so that the communication is open and those channels are moving freely. We believe in doing that right from the beginning. And so we also would set up calls like this at the end, a week or 10 days out from the competition, where we're looking at all, first of all, we would check in with the lifters on a weekly basis. How's your body weight doing? How's training coming along? Do you have any injuries that we need to know about? Obviously, have you got all your ducks in a row in terms of filling out your paperwork, your team contract, all these other things, all these hoops you have to jump through, but creating a timeline for people to follow, but of course, keeping tabs on their training, and then doing a call like this to install their competition game plan so that we have that in play, ready in place for game day. And so we do that with all of our lifters for every single one. And so we invited those conversations, and some of those divas that I mentioned by not mentioning their names didn't want any part of that, or they were unwilling to participate in that process, or we'd be getting like a text message or something, be like, nah, I'm good, or whatever, or they would be unwilling to do that. So to answer your question, do I have other lifters that are examples like Ray? They're few and far between in terms of examples where I've literally showed up in the warm-up room and have not had a prior conversation with them.
Okay.
So that situation with Ray was extremely unique. And I also think of one of the reasons that he was so receptive. First of all, Ray is for those who have never met him, for everything that he is as a lifter, he is all that and then some as a man and as a human being, and the type of person that he is as a husband, as a father, and as just a good man. And I approached him with respect, and I approached him man to man, gentleman to gentleman, not with this authoritative posture that it's my way or the highway. It's like, how can I help you get the best out of you? And so being that he was a coach, he was receptive to that. So again, to answer your question, I think that's the only example of somebody at that level where on game day, I'm like, man, we got 30 minutes to install a game plan and put this together. And I gotta write all this out on paper, because we've done our due diligence and we've had calls like this, these virtual calls where we invite the programming coach in. We're looking at all the videos of their heaviest training sessions. We're looking at their past meet results, and we're looking at the competition, our scouting reports that we've generated from the competitions. And then we are installing a game plan to highlight their strengths and mitigate their weaknesses. We've done all that in advance. So
I mean, my own experience when I met Ray in Canada for the first time, this was my first international, right? Because I've seen videos and all of that. We know Ray William on video. He was walking up the stairs and he had to go in the I was with my missus. My missus said, "Can you take a picture of me with Ray?" I felt like, oh my God, this man will slap me and I will die. Look at the size of his head. But I was like, you know what? Things we do for our women, Matt. You see, things we do. I was like, I'm going to take on Ray. I just literally, last steps, I was like, Ray, I'm so sorry. If you want to punch me, do this after the picture. My missus want a picture with you. He was like, he went like, I'm hungry. I was like, okay, I'm going to wait for you to eat. He was like, no, the food can wait. Let's take a picture. Again, like, that's an amazing guy, right? In terms of like, nothing bothers him. As long as you are happy, it makes you happy. That's what he cares about. Anyone that hasn't met Ray, that's my experience with him. Literally, I got to like Ray William, the person, on that first time when I met him. And my question to you, Matt, you were talking about, I know since we started this, you're talking about you and your wife, SSPTs, you and your wife, you and your wife. Is there a reason why it's only a team of 2?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question. So I think there's a couple of reasons. So SSPT actually started in 2009, and we started it as a physical facility in Maryland. It was a warehouse gym in Maryland, in the US, and it was only 2,000 square feet. And so by nature, it was a very small facility. And we began, the two of us, coaching lifters. It was primarily focused on powerlifters, weightlifters, strongman competitors, people who were serious. strength athletes, et cetera, who didn't want to go to a commercial gym. So the only staff that we necessarily needed at that particular time was just people to fill in some gaps within the day in terms of just kind of making sure the facility was okay, servicing the members, allowing people to buy protein drinks, that sorts of thing. You know what I mean? Just watching the front desk, if you will.
Yeah.
She and I were doing the coaches. Now, we had coaches who would come to us and say, look, I would like to coach out of your facility. I would like to be a subcontractor. And I would say, okay, then we need to sit down and I'm going to interview you. And I don't want this to sound self-righteous and I don't want this to sound standoffish, but quite frankly, there's very few people that I felt would uphold the standard that we have set for ourselves and for our name and for our brand. Now, again, to be fair, that was in 2009. So that was quite a long time ago. And it was in Rockville, Maryland. So we're only talking about people that lived within that vicinity who wanted to come and quote unquote apply for a job. Eventually, we did have some coaches who came in and coached at our facility. We had a weightlifting coach who came in our facility, and we had one more powerlifting coach who came and coached at our facility. And those people turned out to do good things for us. But then, Jerns, as we recently transitioned to Montana, which was 2 years ago, we now basically have a private training studio. It's our detached garage from our house. So it's about half the size of what we had in Maryland, and we do training out of there. So I think the nature of what we do doesn't really lend itself to having a larger staff. I used to write a lot of training and a lot of programming for a lot of lifters back in that time frame from probably 2000. Oh God. I mean, I started doing it in probably 2000 actually, or the late 90s, and it carried all the way to maybe 2015. But I got very burned out. It became something that caused me great pain and like just cognitive dissonance in my brain and in my life, and it wasn't adding a lot of value in my life. So I intentionally stopped offering that as one of our services. I no longer wanted to write programming. I felt like the greatest impact that I could pour back into the community was obviously the game day coaching. I mean, that's above all else. That's my passion. And then of course, doing one-on-one coaching sessions with people, with lifters coming in and wanting to work on technique and doing hands-on stuff. So we still do that sort of thing here at our home, but the SSPT brand, to your point, Jerns, doesn't necessarily lend itself to having a large staff, just because we no longer offer programming, in terms of customized personal programming.
Yeah.
So we don't really require additional people. And also transparently, I'm not going to lie, there's part of us that kind of feels like, we need to do it ourselves. It's like, it's not that other people can't do it as well as us. It's just that I like taking responsibility for my own actions. And if I want to make
because you've written a book, right?
Yes.
So this is your book has answered my question, the one I'm just about to ask, right? Because I was about to say you're such a selfish bastard. You don't want to send your knowledge. You don't want to share your knowledge. But I can't say that anymore. For all due respect, I can't say that because you've written the book. It's an open book, right? So I will say this.
Yep.
I know it's a two-person's service. As you said, you don't require many people around. Would it not be nice to get a younger person, a younger coach to learn the craft from the first to first with yourself?
Are you saying that I'm an old man?
I'm saying
I can't help you here, Jerns.
Yeah, no, man.
Because when you say you start to coach writing program in the late 90s, I was thinking like some people were still in diapers.
I know. No. Look, it's okay. I'll do the math for you. I'm 50 years young, man. I'm 50, and I don't feel 50. I don't necessarily quote unquote identify with age. Is just a number, man. You're as old as you feel. But I'm not going to run from it. I'm going to run to it and say, yeah, I'm 50 and I've been in the game for a long time. To answer your question, there's a couple layers to what you just asked, but I think something that can speak to your legacy are the coaches that you have mentored. And in American football, we have something that we call a coaching tree, and it's the coach at the top and maybe the people that they've had beneath them that they have influenced and who have also now gone on to do great things and have forged their own path. And they've taken what they've known from SSPT, the way that they've been molded and mentored. And then they've taken that, like I said, the bits and pieces, and crafted and molded and forged their own path into the community. And I think we've done that. I think that we've, Sam Calhoun now has a new coach, Patrick Carr, and that's not a name that you guys would know, but Patrick Carr is somebody that we've mentored, and he's fantastic. He's one of these new up and coming coaches. He's actually been in the space for a while, but also, we've done a lot of collaboration in many ways with Jason Tremblay of the Strength Guys. He has mentored us and given us, knowledge, and we have also poured back into him. Jason and I talk a few times a week. Well, I think we've talked, in the past, we've been on a call probably once per week, every single week for the past 2 or 3 months. And it's fantastic. And so he and I are constantly collaborating. And so in many ways, I have helped to mentor him. Brad Couillard, who coaches, if that name, he used to coach Charlie Dixon. He now coaches Solana Lewis. He coaches Steve DeNovi, who's another coach, who coaches Marcellus Williams and so on and so forth. And so I think, I think we have begun to develop this coaching tree of other people that we have, with the younger coaches that we have influenced. And look, I did share a tremendous amount of information, but I think I kept 1 or 2 little trade secrets for myself.
Always. I knew it.
Oh
I knew
my
it.
God.
Yeah, you can't tell everybody every single little nugget of thing. And also, I will say this. I think that the greatest skill, we've talked about a lot of stuff. I think the greatest skill that a game day coach, I'm just talking about a game day coach, can possess is the ability to assess the second attempt and call an appropriate third, because you only have 1 bullet left in your gun to use, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to maximize, I have to determine what Jurns just did on the platform, and now how much does he have left in the tank? And I have to be accurate and consistent. I'm not talking about getting it right once in a while. I'm talking about getting it right most of the time. And that's the greatest skill that a game day coach can possess. And that skill is not necessarily teachable. There's no weird trick or hack that you can find. You just have to go do it. You have to look at thousands of lifts over and over and over again, equipped, raw, both genders, every weight class, every single level, world championships, locals, regionals, etc., over and over again. And that's how you hone that skill and that craft. The book pours into the knowledge. I can't teach that in the book. I can't say, oh, this is how you judge some, but what I do give is, because I analyzed so much data, and I give people a roadmap. I give them a GPS. I give them coordinates to get closer to the number. And so that if a lifter has a 300 kg squat, here are the progressions they are capable of taking, and here is the rough neighborhood. Here is an estimate of where we can end up. And so I think I've given those things in the book. But to your point, Jurns, yeah, man, you always keep 1 or 2 things for yourself.
I'm happy you mentioned about the whole coaching tree and the American NFL sort of analogy. I'm not too deep into NFL, but I know there's the head coach, and then there's coach for the special teams, the offensive, defensive, and all sorts. But my question actually was, like you said, you're very much in the community. You've mentored a good number of coaches and everything else, and you've been in this game for God knows, almost more than 2 decades now. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
What in the time that you've been here, and I remember asking this to Mike T as well, was that was there anything that you feel as though was stayed the same in the coaching realm in powerlifting from when you started to up to now? And were there any changes that you think was okay, cool, so maybe this is the new nuance, the new sort of approach that's popularized, so on and so called, and fizzled out? Or so basically, what was there that's remained consistent since you started? What was like sort of like that's changed from when you started to what's sort of popularized now? That's sort of like two-pronged
Wow,
question.
that's a great question. And I'm probably going to ask you to repeat it in just a second because I'm going to
Yeah, no
forget it.
worries.
Yeah. But so you're asking me what stayed the same in the coaching profession and what have I seen change
Hmm.
over these 28 years? I think what I would say, I think there's been a lot that's changed. I mean, there's been so many changes just because of the nature of, powerlifting now is truly a sport.
Hmm.
I don't think it really, it used to be a sport in the sense that we had federations, that we had national teams, we had world championships. I mean, the first IPF world championships was in 1972, which was the year I was born. But if you know your history, it was only America and Great Britain at the world championship. So how can you call that a true worlds? So
Yeah.
it has truly become a sport. And so I think just with advances in technology, I mean, look, man, the internet was just becoming a thing. You know what I mean? When I started coaching and I started
Yeah.
competing, like,
That,
so it's like, and there are people that obviously listen to this podcast that have never experienced life without an internet. They've never experienced life without a smartphone. No,
mhm.
so I mean, let's just keep it real. So I'm not against all these technologies. I think powerlifting is in a way better place now than it used to be. So the things that have stayed the same in terms of the coaching realm is just, I think, the fact that you're dealing with humans on a personal level, and it's always, it's about relationship. And that's what coaching is about. It's about facilitating and maximizing communication and understanding of each other and what you bring to me and what I can give back to you to make you become the best version of yourself. I would say that part of it, the relational aspect, and of course now there's more information on coaching psychology, and so it's that in itself has deepened and broadened. But I think that is what has remained the same. I think all the other stuff has changed and changed dramatically. Like, we didn't used to scout for prior competitions. There was no social media and Instagram, and you didn't. I
Yeah.
mean, there was none of that. The only thing you had was the prior year's results. I don't know what you had in Great Britain, and maybe you guys don't even know, but like in America, we had one publication before the internet, and it was called USA. It was called Powerlifting USA. And that was a magazine that came out once per month, and it shared meet results. But you'd be getting, like, let's say in June, you got the month of June, and the world championships happened in April or May. Those results may not even be published for like another 3 months, man. So it's like, it's ridiculous, right? It's seriously. So unless you had, and I even mentioned this in my book, unless you knew somebody who was there, or you had a coach, or you had a friend, or you had an anecdote that you could draw from, there was no written form or electronic form or context. So there's been so much that has changed about the sport, and it's been all for the better. It's wonderful that all of these things put the technology, push the sport forward and take it to another place. And that's why I think you now need coaches who are more multifaceted. Yeah. Like back then, you really didn't need somebody who was as multifaceted as today. But now we understand the advantages of coaching psychology. Jurgens understands the advantages of having somebody help him with his nutrition to maximize performance. He understands the advantage of working with you for the programming aspect and maximizing that. And so the sport is in a much different place than it is, than it was when I first started. And yeah, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was better back then. I think it's better now. I mean, are there things that I would change? Yeah, but no, it's wonderful. It's much better.
I mean,
I think,
yeah, go on,
go on,
Drex.
I think even that, talking about much better now, you can tell even the performance of the lifters on the platform.
Oh,
No matter what, I know people would just say so-called world class or elite. Even in the novice, or even in the divisionals or the county or whatever, you look at these performances, you're just thinking like, wow, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have a 17-year-old pulling 300, 700 pounds. No. Do you know what I mean? So it just, as you said there, because it's becoming a sport, is opening doors to a lot of people to actually join the party and join the sport. So it is in a much better place. I mean, the question I have for you, Matt, is probably a little bit deviation from what we've been talking about here in terms of like coaching, because I have you now. I got so many questions. You get you get coaches, right? I'm talking about international level, international coach come to you saying, "Oh, you only got two lifts in you, right? You only got two lifts in you. Let's get those two lifts. The third one is what it is." So, what would you say about this type of handling, where even a lifter, let's just forget about the coach, the lifter can come to me, because the example I'm giving you, I've done that in the past, where I come to my hand and I say, "Look, I only have two deadlift in me."
Okay.
Right? So, however you want to get that two deadlift, however you want to get that number, I don't care. But this is the number I have in me. No more, no less. So, how would you deal with someone like that? Or what are your thoughts about that kind of mindset?
Well, okay, so there's a couple ways that I would approach that. I like to use the analogy that when you're competing, here's another reason why powerlifting is a sport, and it's not just a test day. It's not just a max out day, is because you only have, and so we're going to use you as an example, right, Jordan? So we're agreeing that we're using, right? You have 9 opportunities to score points, to build a total, right? And so lots of times people, they only think of this in terms of strength. And yeah, you have a lifter A who's stronger than lifter B, but if you look at it also in terms of it's a game that we are playing, because we all have 9 opportunities and we want to maximize those point scoring opportunities to add points to the total. And so if I have Jurens and we have a lifter who might be stronger than us, but if we make our 9 attempts and they only make 7 or 8, Jurens might be able to win. Now, if Jurens tells me, "Matt, I'm telling you, I only have 2 deadlifts in me, or I only have 2, how do we get to that number?" I would say this. First of all, we're not forfeiting an attempt. We're not intentionally passing an attempt. Because if we pass a deadlift, let's say, right? If we say, "No, we're not going to take this one, we're just going to pass it," I'm forfeiting 1/3 of my opportunities to score points for the deadlift. Like, why would you, right? So why would a coach intentionally pass on an opportunity, say, "Nah, I'm good," right? The only time you do that, the only time that you forfeit an opportunity, and because you only get 9 chances, if you do the math, that's about 11%, right? Right? 9 times, it's 11% of your opportunities. The only time I'm going to forfeit an opportunity to score points or to build to my total would be if you took a squat and got out of position and it was an absolute grinder, RPE 10 or 11, and we knew beyond a shadow of fact there's no way Jurens can come back and we can add weight to the bar, or even if we add 2.5 or 5 kilos, he's just going to get buried by it and he's going to, possibly hurt himself, and it's going to wind up coming at the expense of having a lower deadlift. Okay. But you're talking about the deadlift. So what I would say is, I would first of all discuss with you, like, what's your top end? Where do you think you want to end? And maybe we wind up taking what effectively would be your last warm up as your opening attempt or something to save some gas in the tank, right? Right. Like, if you truly tell me, "Matt, if we take a traditional opener, it's going to use up too much gas in my tank," right? Then I'm going to say, "Okay, Jurens, why don't we back off a little bit and maybe take a lighter opening attempt, which is maybe your last warm up or somewhere between that, and then go ahead and go to your second attempt." You know what I mean? That's probably the strategy that I would take, because here's why. Because if we go heavy on your first 2, then we're automatically admitting, or you've admitted to me, I'm going to have nothing for my third, or it's going to be rubbish. Well, the third is where all the jockeying and all the strategies coming into play.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Nobody's jockeying and playing games on the first deadlift attempt, other than maybe someone had put in a fake opener, or they bumped theirs up 2.5 to gain advantage if they don't have lot number or whatever. But the medals aren't being determined by the first one. The medals are being determined by the last one. So I'm not going to have you go heavier than planned on your first one. That's the mistake that a lot of coaches make, man. They'll bump their lifter's opener to gain advantage in the order, but I'm on board with that when and only when it doesn't take their lifter out of their comfort zone. And I like to refer to it as their strength zone. Okay. If you add enough weight to their opener that we're now almost infringing on the second attempt, we're using up too much gas in the tank. And I know my lifter is not going to have enough left in the third. And then it's pointless. It's like, I would have rather just gone ahead of the other competitor on our opener anyway, and then start playing the game on the second and the third one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
does that make sense? Does that make sense, Jerns?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
my follow-up question from that, Matt, is obviously you have like the experience, the expertise, and everything else, right? But I'm wondering now, in the whole game day aspect, is there any coach in America or internationally even that you feel as though, oh man, they were good, they got me good? Like, is there anything that you can recollect at the moment that you're like, play me there?
Yeah. So, well, I think so. Of course, I'm going to sound biased, and this is going to sound. But look, I think my wife does it. I think she's the best game day coach in the world. My wife, Susie. Of course, I'm biased. Of course, I'm biased. But I think that she understands how to play the game and plays the game as well as anyone. She and I have not coached against each other, although it's funny. We were going to have the opportunity before this Article 14 stuff came out. If Chance had competed in Texas, so let me back up. I have been coaching Bryce Lewis at every single significant competition. That's the Arnold, that's Worlds, that's Nationals. We have joined forces with him since 2015. That's when we started working with Bryce. So, and we've worked with him since, not the local competitions that he does, but the main ones.
Yeah.
Right. So I had already agreed to work with Chance at PA Nationals and had no clue that Bryce Lewis was coming over to Powerlifting America. So when we found that Bryce was coming over, he's like, yeah, can you coach me? And I was like, yo, I already agreed to coach Chance. And Susie was like, I'm available. And so Susie was going to coach. So this would have been good because Susie was going to coach Bryce at Nationals, which she did. She coached Bryce with, at PA Nationals. And of course he had a great day, except he cramped up and so on and so forth. So he didn't, whatever, but I was going to coach Chance. So that would have been fun coaching against my wife, because leading up to that day, like, she hopped on a call, like a game planning call with Bryce. And I wasn't on that call. I didn't look at any of their notes. I was like, look, we're going to play this fair. Like, I'm going to hop on a call with Chance and we're going to go head to head and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so, like, we're going to coach against each other. And I mean, we all know how we play the game, but that would have been fun. So when you ask me, I mean, Susie is phenomenal. I've never really had the opportunity to coach against her. That would have been fun. That would have been fun, obviously having two great athletes in Bryce
head to head. Yeah.
That would have been fantastic. And of course the gamesmanship that would have been there. So, but one of the coaches that really stands out to me is she goes by Carolina Arvidsson of Sweden. If you know who she is, fantastic, man. She's phenomenal. She, I think, is one of the best game day coaches out there. She really understands strategy. She does a lot of little kind of foxy stuff with switching attempts and kind of, occasionally some weird gamesmanship with putting in some fake stuff. I mean, not to sound too, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, she doesn't really fool me, but I look at it and I'm like, I see what you're doing there. Kind of like, you might fake out one of these other coaches, but I see what you're trying to do. Like, I'm not falling for the okie doke.
Yeah.
But she's fantastic. I've coached against Dietmar Wolf for many times. He's a part of the IPF executive and Team Norway and so forth. And Dietmar's a really good coach. I mean, his lifters execute consistently. I think one of the things at that level that can make coaches really good at the international level is their consistency and not making mistakes. So, right, not making an error. Right. And so look, at the end of the day, like I said, every single one of us is going to make an error in judgment.
Yeah.
There's no question,
look, yeah.
I thought Jurens had 10 kilos left and he only really had 7.5 and he goes out and he misses. And that's and I assessed the situation incorrectly. Judgment errors, that's acceptable. That's understandable. Or I might put the right number on the bar, the lifter doesn't go out there and execute in the way that I know that they can execute or something, and they kind of crap the bed, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But those things are excusable, they're understandable. What is inexcusable is not knowing the rules, not knowing how to leverage those rules, and making a tactical error in terms of math or getting an attempt change or something like that wrong.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
my wife won our national championships in 2014, the Raw National Championships in Denver against Marisa Inda, because her coaches submitted the wrong third deadlift attempt and they already called bars loaded. And
Mm.
once it's been announced bars loaded, you can't make another attempt change.
Yeah, of
And it had
course.
and I'm not, look, we love Marisa. We've helped Marisa. We've competed against her many times. And Marisa on that day would have beaten Susie. We believe that. She was stronger in the deadlift.
Yeah.
But her coaches, they bollocks the math up,
Yeah,
and they
man.
got it wrong, and they put in the wrong number. And so it's like, you don't like to win that way, but it's like, also it's like, look, man, that's strategy, that's the game. And so those types of errors, they're unacceptable. They're
Yeah.
inexcusable. You can't. And so that's why, you know, at those high level meets, I always have someone double checking my work, double checking my math. And you need to be humble enough to do that. You need to have an assistant or a mentor or another person. Have them look at it too. Like I don't want to get this wrong. Like, am I seeing what you're seeing? Let's make sure this is right. I don't want to make the wrong call for endurance. You know what I'm saying? You know,
Yeah.
so you got to be humble enough to do that. So anyway, but those are some of the coaches that I think are phenomenal at the international level. There's also a Russian coach, I forget his name, that I've coached against many times. That was more on the equip side. I think his first name is Ivan, and I've forgotten his last name. He's now probably in his 50s, and he's done a lot with the Russian Federation. He was very good too, and they just don't make mistakes. And so it's hard to beat somebody when they don't make a mistake.
I was
what
gonna
Matt Gary,
say.
what Matt, sorry, Joey. What Matt Gary just said there, I will sum it up. He said, British coaches, level up. You guys are not good enough. Level up, please.
Well, I was
So
gonna say, man, like if you won the little battle between the Chance and Bryce Lewis thing, that would have been an awkward ride home between you and your wife, man. Like, I know you were giving her props, probably trying to like give the brownie points all there, but man, if that happened, oof. But
Yeah.
no dinner table anymore.
yeah,
I know we almost crushed 2 hours. My last question will be for you is, I know the book is out and a lot of people I'm gonna get my copy next week.
Yep.
I'm competing at the British next week, but I'm not gonna look at the book because it's gonna mess up my
Yep.
programming. So I'll look at the book for later on, but I will get my copy next week. So if there was 3 advice or tips or whatever you call it from handlers that are willing to buy your book, but thinking, shall I buy? Shall I not buy? If there was 3 tips that you will give them, what would them be?
3 tips from the book.
Yeah.
In order to convince them to get it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'll be honest, it's the very first one, and it's not going to be there's nothing sexy about this or attractive, but I think here's what I see, because I know you wrote this in the DMs and I wanted to address this. So this is going to pour into my answer. You asked me if I see something different between some of the new breed of coaches versus ones that were here when I started. And so this pours into my answer. I think, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say that powerlifting used to be better, because I think it's better now. And the same thing with the coaches. I think we've all evolved, and the game has risen. And I think it's better today for all the reasons that we discussed. What I think today is, I think that a lot of coaches chase the wrong things. They chase ephemeral, temporary, transient qualities when they should be chasing and finding out what is their philosophy, what is their reasons for doing this, the way that they operate, their moral code, their principles, their values. And that's why I put philosophy as the very first chapter in the entire book. It's not sexy, it's not popular, it's not attractive, but we go through some steps in that chapter to help you determine, to help navigate that process of determining what are the things that are truly important to you as a person. And then when you can define those, it is going to open up opportunities for you in the people that you want in your corner, the people that you want to commiserate with, the people that you want to bond with, the people that you want to break bread with, the people that you want to be in fellowship and family with. And so that's the first thing. I think the second thing would be, I go through a comprehensive review of the rules. I list what I think are the 12 most important rules. And I think there's coaches out there who have never once picked up a rule book. Like they don't even bother to like read the rule book. Like, how do you do that? How do you play a game where you don't even understand and know what the rules are? And so it's important as a coach that you be versed in that. I can't tell you, it's embarrassing, man, how many primetime sessions I've been to, or even a world championship. And I have another coach from other place, somebody with, 10 times the social media following that I have, because they're all about chasing that clout and chasing the likes and the shares and the follows. And they ask me about a certain rule. And I'm like, come on, man, like this is elementary. Like you should know this. So I think the rules. And then I think the third thing would be the strategy, the way that I've examined the data, and the way that we systematically go about our warm-up process, the way that we call attempts, and our strategy section. I think a lot of people will naturally use this, and that's fine. Like if you bought a car from me, Joey, I'm not going to tell you how to drive the car. Like it's your car. Like you can drive the car however you want to drive it. You want to drive it slow, drive it fast, I don't care. It's your car. So I've said that in the book. Like the book is about 20 chapters long. And I understand that some people, that'll be like overwhelming, but I hope when people open it up, they're like, holy crap, I didn't realize it was getting this much. I want to give them more than they anticipated. So that's why I made this book so comprehensive and so thorough that it would cover all these different things, so that it would just blow their mind. So I think some people will use it as a reference text where they'll jump right to the chapter on strategy and say, okay, this is how I navigate this situation, at this type of meet. And that's fine. You can do that, but also would encourage people at some point in time to start at the very beginning and read it all the way through. Because I intentionally put it in a sequence that flows, that talks about our process from before the meet even starts. I mean, like, why am I going to talk about warming up if I haven't told you about how to make weight first? And why am I going to tell you about making weight if I haven't talked about what we do in terms of scouting before that? Do you follow me?
Yes.
And why am I going to? Yeah. So there's a natural, logical flow and sequence that takes place. So again, if you want to jump around from chapter to chapter and pull and pluck different pieces, that's all cool. But I would encourage people at some point in time to go all the way through it.
Yeah.
And read it from the beginning, because then you'll be able to taste the full flavor of the book.
Man. Well, Matt, I'm not gonna lie to you. That's actually where my question came from, where, who is your book focused more on? Because I did see the contents list that you put down, and it did come across as a sequence. That's why I asked, was it for more for a coach or for an athlete? And the question though that Jones brought up about the whole, that you mentioned actually, about the breed of coaches nowadays, that came from me. So he took my last question, man. I'm like,
no, and that's a great question. I think that, I think that you really you got to understand what you're about, as opposed to coaches who come into this space and are just like, how can I get the most clicks, the most likes, the most clout, the most tweets, the most follows, the most shares? Like, man, you're chasing the wrong things. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter if you go about this with RP or percents or whatever, none of that part of your coaching philosophy doesn't matter. Like I said before, those are tools and those are strategies that coaches can use. But what is your fabric? What makes you you? And I know that that's not popular, but it's important. And Jurens, you might want to, I'm going to tell you, mate, here's a pro tip. And I'm glad I'm getting this opportunity to mention this on your podcast. When you write a manual like this, and it's like a how-to instructional manual, you know what I mean? And it's so informational. It's impossible to remember every single thing that you wanted to include. Like I've been working on this for a long time, but what happened was, and I kind of figured this would happen. I went to Powerlifting American Nationals and I'm sitting in the front row. And so I got to watch every single session. And there was a scenario that happened right in front of me with chips and records that I didn't include in the book. And I'm like, damn it, man. Like, why didn't I mention that? Right. And then I was like, then I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna be at the Arnold next week, and I'm sure there's gonna be something at the Arnold. And what happens? Something happens at the Arnold, and I'm like, I forgot to include that. And so, anyway, all that is to say is that in the attempt selection and strategy section of the book, which is by far the biggest, most extensive chapter, I think it's like 40 some pages in the book, right? I went over the most popular and the most common scenarios that you're likely to find, but naturally I forgot a few. But here's what I'm gonna do. After the Sheffield, because I'm going to Sheffield and I'm going to be there. I'm going to be cheering on the lifters. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I don't know that I've been this excited for a powerlifting meet that I'm not coaching in, in my entire life. I can't wait to be there. I can't wait to see you guys and to meet all these people. But I already know there's going to be some scenarios because I've been scouting the competition, even, just from the fans' perspective. And I've got a social media post coming out tomorrow. I'm going to tag you boys in it, and it's going to help facilitate some of what we're talking about with world records. So anyway, all that is to say, this spring, so when I get home from Sheffield, I am going to add to the book. I am going to add about 2 or 3 more case studies and some additional information. To every person who has already bought a copy of my book, you are getting a brand new free ebook from me with the updated information. And anyone who buys it after I re-release this updated content, you'll get the brand new version. So Jurgens, so it's like Jurgens, in your case, you were saying intentionally you're going to hold off because you don't want it to influence your decisions. And I think that's smart. You might want to hold out for like another month or two, right? Because when I get back from the Sheffield, I'm going to go ahead and revise it and add these other, I think I have a minimum of 2, maybe 3 case studies that I'll add some additional content. And so it'll be even more thorough and more complete. And like I said, anybody who's already bought a copy, you don't got to worry. You're going to get a brand new copy in your email box for free. Updated.
Oh, Daryl was worrying, man, but I guess I could get more for my money's worth, innit?
Yeah. You can just wait.
Joe's gonna read the old one. I don't care, man. But Matt, I mean, like I said, like Joe's you and Joe's pretty much took the last question off me. It's been amazing to have you on. Obviously honored as well because I know you said it's a bucket list for a podcast for you to be on, and like you said, we're gonna see you in a few weeks' time at Sheffield, man. Hopefully we can get a few pints in. I mean, Durance isn't competing. I'm not competing. So hopefully we get a few. I don't know if you like drinking beer, bro, or.
Yeah, for sure, man. 100%. Yes.
Let's go. Let's get the pints in and then hopefully see you then, man, and have fun.
Yes. Would love to see you guys. I can't wait. I want to thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you for having me. You're a very gracious host. I appreciate your time. You all are very generous with it. And I appreciate what you guys do for the powerlifting community and keep up the good work. I'm always listening.
And likewise to you. Likewise to you. But yeah, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And then again, we'll see you in a few weeks.
All right. See you soon.
2 weeks. Bye.
See you, man.
2 weeks time.